Save the Butcher!
Hi, this is Bob from HelpSaveTheButchers.com, and today we're going to talk about some basic merchandising of a boneless chuck roll. We're not going to get fancy. The cuts that we're going to get out of this boneless chuck roll today are going to be cuts that you would normally have in your meat case on a regular basis, or should try merchandising. The first cut we're going to take off this boneless chuck roll is going to be the boneless chuck short ribs. Now, short ribs have become very popular in restaurants today, and the price of bone-in short ribs because of that is going up. So you can merchandise a boneless short rib for your customer here and have a good value for the consumer and a good profit for the store. Also, we're going to take a chuck eye steak. Now, a chuck eye steak is the first two steaks off the rib ends of the chuck. That steak there is something you might have to educate your consumer with if they're not aware of it, but you should be able to talk it up. It's a good eating steak, tender steak, continuation of the ribeye muscle into the chuck, and a lot of flavor. We're also going to take some boneless chuck fajita steaks off of this. Now, there's a lot of grilling going on, and people are looking for something a little bit different. Boneless chuck fajita is a flavorful fajita steak, and that you can merchandise at a reasonable price for your customer and still a value to the store, making a little bit better profit. We're going to take the standard boneless center cut chuck steak out of this, and then we're going to roll the neck end for a boneless chuck pot roast. And as always, remember, minimize your trim so you can maximize your gross profit. Okay, now we're going to talk about some of the preliminary work you have to do before you start processing a boneless chuck. There's two things I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about the bottom of the chuck and make sure there's no discoloration from the steaming process. If you leave any discoloration on the primal, it's going to, with age in the case, get a lot worse, and you're going to end up losing profit that way. You're better off taking it off ahead of time. If it's really bad discolored or something, you're going to turn around and not use it in Hamburg trim. If it's just a little bit of steam, then it's fine, okay? We're going to just trim the bottom here. I'm taking off the parts where the feather bones came off. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to turn it over and have the top part show. And where it comes off the blade bone, there's usually a piece of gristle right here. This is not good for Hamburg. Do not save it. Make sure you got your meat off the top of it first. Save that. Put your knife underneath it and go in both directions to take it off. Make sure if you did cut into the meat on the other end that you do try to take that off and salvage that. Every hundredth of a pound is worth cents to you in your gross profit, and you don't want to lose it. I take 1% on my bottom line in my meat department any day of the week, so you don't want to lose hundredths of a pound. Okay. This part here on the front of the chuck towards the neck on the top, you'll find a wad of fat there. And what we're going to do, we're going to take in about 1.5 to 2 inches here, that's 2 inches I'd say. We're going to take the front part of where the ribeye connects into it here and take the excess fat, take that off as a square cut, and round this off on the back. Now this will become Hamburg trim or stew depending on the piece in here, whether or not it has nerve in or not. If it has nerve, it's going to be Hamburg. If it's no nerve, you're going to do stew. Here's the short rib part, the continuation. We're going to start where the meat is here, cut that off there, square it off over there. Now I'm going to try to cut other than where the rib bones came from. So just like when you do a short rib, you don't cut through the bone, you're going to cut through the meat. So I'm going to try to cut where the meat is so that we can get a better looking piece when we go to display it. You're going to display it side up like this so it shows the meat, like that. On the back side here, we're going to have a good piece on top for stew. A lot of the rest of it is going to be nerve. Have nerve in it. We're not going to use that for stew, we're going to use it for Hamburg. Even your chuck stew should not have big chunks of fat on it. The idea of putting a package in the case is to make sure it sells. If it doesn't sell, I don't care if you get a high price per pound or anything else on it, it's not going to help your gross profit. Product must sell to make a profit. Okay, next we're going to cut a boneless chuck pot roast off the neck end. I'm going to make sure on the top though that there's no real excess fat. Take it off there, not cutting into the meat, and just skin the fat off so that when we cut into the roast, all of a sudden we don't have a glob that we're surprised by. So, and we're just taking off the surface fat. I'm not digging down into it. We're going to roll it. I'm going to show you how I tie my string, or how I hold my string when I'm tying a butcher's knot. I use my boning knife in my hand. I wrap it around twice. This gives me the ability to hold onto the string and pull tight without pulling into my fingers. I put the string in between my little finger and my next finger, and when I want to hold the string in place, I just grip the knife, and when I want it to slide, I let go. Okay, we're going to pull in, we're going to decide how much of a pot roast we're going to take off. I'm going to do approximately 2 small pot roasts off of this piece. Presentation is everything. People buy by eye appeal. I mean, they buy by price too, don't get me wrong. But if you want to be able to really sell your product on a daily basis and maximize your gross profits, the product has to look good. It has to look eye-appealing to a customer. They want to make sure it's something that they agree is going to be good. They want to have the confidence when they walk out the door with that. So, 2 chuck roasts. There we go there. Here's our roast, and we're going to make sure also that we put a pad on the bottom of it right away to make sure when we hand it to the wrapper that it hasn't lost any extra blood or purge out of it. And there's our one there and our second roast. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about cutting boneless center cut chuck steaks. Real easy. Normally they should be about 3/4 of an inch. You can merchandise them in 2 ways. In a family pack for those customers that are looking for value. On my family pack section, I get at least 50 cents a pound less than my single pack. I'm going to cut a few off of here. We're going to try to keep them even, about 3/4 of an inch. Okay, there's your boneless center cut chuck steaks. Next, we're going to cut some thin sliced fajita. Now, I would recommend if you have a deli slicer that you have the ability in your meat department to use, I would recommend using that. It's nice and thin that way. The consistency, you set a number and you make sure every person that slices it keeps it on that set number. Now also that means that the meat cutter does not always have to be the one that's slicing fajita for the customer. You can have a clerk that can do that. It'll save you some time and some money. I'm going to slice this by hand today, and we're going to show you it's coming towards the rib end of the chuck. It's a little bit tenderer on this end than it is the neck end, and a little bit better presentation. Just make sure when you do slice it, you slice it as thin as you possibly can. Now, when I package this in my store, I'm going to show you, I package 3 to an 8 tray. Come weekends, we do it on the slicer, and we make sure we put out at least 4 to 5 pound packages with a 50-cent discount on it for the customer that's looking to feed a large cookout or a large amount of people. Okay, we have 6 pieces there. We're going to pack that up into an 8 tray, 3 in a package. Now, one of the points I want to make out about packaging, purge costs you a lot of money, and anytime you have to rehandle a package, it costs gross profit. Also, presentation is everything to the customer. If the package is getting bloody, it's not going to sell as well. So what I do is I use a double pad on the bottom of each package like this. They're a 50 pad. The cost increase is not that drastic compared to the savings that it'll make for you in lost purge. We're going to package 3 in a tray, and we're going to package them in order. Whenever you're doing multiple steaks in a package, we always want to make sure that they're in the same order in which they were cut. They're pretty much even. And you'll notice on my packages that when I'm doing, I try to give the same exposure on each steak. So that way there, it's better presentation for the customer. Now next, we're going to cut a chuck eye steak. Now, sometimes when you have to get to the chuck eye, you're going to have a little bit of an angle like we do here, and we're going to correct that, but we want to make sure that the steaks we cut are even. Do not put out a wedge. No one's going to put a steak on the grill that's this thin on this end and this thick on the other end. So we're going to make stew out of that in 1 second. We're going to take this, we're going to look at it, we're going to get the chuck eye, the continuation of the ribeye muscle, and we're going to cut about 3/4 to an inch thick. And normally you're looking at about 2 steaks out of this piece. 2 nice steaks. That's what we have there. Those are 2 nice chuck eye steaks. They're going to be a tender steak. You might have to teach your customer and explain to them about the value with this steak, but it's a good eating steak and it has a lot of flavor. They're especially good on the grill. I enjoy them. And they can be marinated. It adds even more flavor to them. So when I package my chuck eye steaks, I use 2 of them in a 4 tray. I want to make them look different than the ribeye steak, and I want the customer, I want to encourage the sale. I want to increase. It's a little bit less price per pound than the ribeye, obviously, so I want to be able to sell a little bit more and have the price value for me there also. So that's my chuck eye steak. And then, of course, we're going to do our stew meat right away rather than leave it. There we go. There's our finished product. Very basic merchandising of a boneless chuck roll. We have a boneless center cut chuck steak, family pack, and single. Offer a variety to your customer. A first cut chuck steak here. Some boneless short ribs over here. Should be a good product you should be able to build sales with. Some thin sliced chuck fajita. Remember, it's better if it's sliced on the slicer. You keep the consistency of it. A package of boneless chuck stew meat, and we have a couple of boneless chuck pot roasts. This is Bob from HelpSaveTheButchers.com. Remember, the secret to running a great meat department is doing the basics really well.
Help save the butcher!